Monday morning, Bishop on Air back at it live, and you can always contact me. Just email bishoponair@gmail.com or find me on Twitter, X, Facebook, here on YouTube. You can also follow me and track me on Instagram as well. So just a couple of areas where you can find the program. But we've got tons to get to. Of course, this is going to be a big week for litigation against Illinois' gun and magazine ban. You've got the latest when it comes to the rules that are going to be considered by the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. So we'll tackle that. We've also got to get into the latest out of Chicago. We chatted with William Kelly. Of course, crime's an issue, migration's an issue, but he really focuses in on the issue of the public being able to speak to their city council in Chicago and how that there are efforts underway to try to curb that type of interaction. So we'll definitely talk about that as well. There's tons to get to here with Bishop on Air. Top of the morning. Hello and good morning to those just now checking in with the live program. So greatly appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. So stay tuned. Just a brief moment here. We'll jump right into all that we need to know. All right.
So I hate that mainstream media are picking up right-wing media talking points, so let me correct you a little bit. Yeah, there are 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. 2.4 million people do not have assault weapons. So when you talk about the percentage of people who are filing and registering, it's a much higher percentage than what you've cited of the
Governor J.B. Pritzker last month reacting to the low number of individuals who are registering their firearms. And if you take a look at the Illinois State Police statistics, updated, at least when I saw on Friday, and it went from 0.2% of the 2.4 million FOID card holders to 0.25% of FOID card holders. So that's where we're at right now when it comes to the registration. And we've got just under 3 weeks here before January 1st deadline kicks in for people to register with state police banned firearms. A lot of back and forth on this. We'll hear more of what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say last month. Also, you've got State Representative Bob Morgan as well, sounding off on the number of people who have registered firearms. But I did talk with Todd Vandermeide from Freedom Steel on Friday, and we delved into the rules, and in particular how much those rules have changed just in the span of a few months here, from September 15th when the initial emergency rules were filed to now, where you've got the rules that are on second notice and the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules meeting tomorrow. Also tomorrow, while JCAR's meeting in the morning, you've got the Southern District of Illinois that's going to be hearing the case challenging the gun ban registry. So that's coming up as well tomorrow. Again, a big week when it comes to this issue of Illinois' gun ban and registry. But Todd Vandermeide talking about the rules that are on second notice and how much those rules have changed just in a handful of weeks.
Wow. They've made some substantial changes here. And I think that one of the things I've noticed is they still do not address common parts in a comprehensive way. You can sell, they talked about that if a gun like the Ruger Precision is sold with an AR-15 style pistol grip, that as sold like that, it's okay, even though, it's a bolt action gun, but it's coming as a complete package. But then they go on and say that if you take that grip off, it has to be registered. But they don't seem to address the fact that, okay, maybe I'm changing the grip out. I want one with a different angle on it, whatever that is. But now the registration is supposed to close January 1st. How do you register something like that? I mean, they don't make any allowances for that. Their administration of the program isn't very good. They don't really say how residents who move into the state are supposed to register something. They make up that if you're a exempt party, a security guard, a law enforcement officer, and let's say you either leave the law enforcement field or you retire, they say those individuals can register the firearms that they obtained under their exemption, but they don't put any parameters around that. So those are just a couple of parts that are screwy and they're just not thought out. They've given some, they've given some comment to feeding devices, but they contradict themselves. In one part, they say that for shotguns, you use the largest size shell that it's chambered for, but then in their FAQs and things, they say that if it's an AR mag and it'll hold 10 rounds of 458 SOCOM or 30 rounds of 5.56, you go with the 30 round capacity. So I don't know what they're thinking here.
Again, Todd Vandermeide, when I chatted with him on Friday, we also talked about the vagueness and how he says that there's still unanswered questions and a lot of things that just really are not clear in those rules.
The law used some very vague terms, and I think that they're within their scope to sit there and define some of those. So they have taken licensed firing ranges to mean those ranges that would fall under the civil immunities prospects of the liability standards. There is a definition there. We've been operating under that definition for over 20 years. So it would seem that, okay, that's legitimate. They did receive a bunch of questions about gun clubs and FFLs and what they're supposed to do. And they've gone back and forth on that. Now they're telling us that gun clubs don't have to register their particular inventories that they may have that may fall under this, because it's not uncommon for gun clubs that the president signs for things but they're not the true owner of it. But Illinois has provisions in law that really allow corporations to own guns. Somebody has to sign for it at the store. Someone has to do the 4473 and the like. So those are some changes in there. I think that's going to clear a few things up, but there's still a lot that's fairly vague on this.
You've got Vandermeide, again, touching on the vagueness issues and also on the public comments that were provided because Illinois State Police did do, 3 different hearings that were prescribed by the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. And those hearings, we reviewed those in some detail with a lot of people interested in all of that. But it wasn't just the hearings where public comments were provided. There were also public comments provided in writing. I was able to get my hands on some of this documentation showing a bunch of questions from citizens asking details and technical questions and making comments about how they feel that this law is tyrannical and how they don't see how this can be even slightly constitutional. So you've got the public comments that have been coming in by email or by mail, and you had some from organizations out of Chicago focused on children's health, saying that this is good and limiting the access to firearms is going to lower the number of mass shootings. Proponents of the measure said, but there were also proponents that apparently used some kind of automated mailing system of sorts that was flagged by some internal to state police mechanics that it was considered spam. So Vandermeide talking about just the myriad public comments that were made.
Yeah, it sounds like they had about 240 postcard style comments. It's fine just the way it is. Well, that just shows you how much they don't know about firearms.
So Vandermeide also talking about JCAR, Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. They are set to meet on Tuesday morning, where they will take up these second notice rules. I asked Todd what he thinks that JCAR should do.
I think that it would be nice if they turn the rule back. They're not going to do that. It would be nice to see them file an objection saying, you guys fell way short of this. I think the problem is that they are sitting there with a looming deadline, having procrastinated And now they get, the members of JCAR want something on the books so that in these last 2 weeks or so of the requirement to register a firearm, that the public has some notice. I think the notice has been woefully inadequate. I mean, now you're talking about a 35-page document that people are supposed to comprehend to understand what they're supposed to do. And you're going to get 2 weeks to read it, digest it, and figure out how it applies to you. Yeah, they've mishandled this thing all the way through. It would have been nice had they been more proactive on this, but I think JCAR is going to let the rule go into the final form, go into effect, and just so that they can say they've got something on the books.
So again, Todd Vandermeide with Freedom Steel on YouTube, a gun rights advocate and somebody who's been in the trenches in committee hearings talking about this issue for years when it comes to gun regulation. But again, I want to highlight the number of registrations that we've seen so far. According to Illinois State Police statistics, you've got of the 2.4 million FOID card holders, 6,141 individuals have disclosed a total of 12,000 firearms, 6,200 accessories, and 117 ammunition disclosures for a total of around 18,500 total disclosures. When Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked about this last month of the number of those disclosing, he tended to kind of brush aside what some characterize as a low turnout.
Mainstream media are picking up right-wing media talking points, so let me correct you a little bit. Yeah, there are 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. 2.4 million people do not have assault weapons. So when you talk about the percentage of people who are filing and registering, it's a much higher percentage than what you've cited of the people who are to do so. I can tell you, at least for me, that I think all of us take our time sometimes when we know the deadline is 2.5 months hence, that we'll find the time eventually to go online, which is what they need to do, and to register as they're required to do. So we expect there to be more and more people as we get closer to the deadline, which is the end of the year, to do so. And people who don't, obviously at some point they will be breaking the law. They're not that common, and I should probably ask Representative Morgan, who drafted the bill, and Senator Morrison, who was very instrumental in it, to talk about this. But I will say that the target here is keeping people safe. You should be able and free to go to a parade and not get shot at, and not have 83 bullets fired in 60 seconds or less. And that's all we're asking. We're not taking guns away from people. We're not limiting your freedom. We're simply recognizing that we want people to be safe, and don't think that it's a weapon that keeps you safe to have something that fires that many bullets in that short a period of time.
So again, Governor J.B. Pritzker reacting to the numbers, but he wasn't the only one. State Representative Bob Morgan, who pushed this as well, he provided some reaction to the numbers and kind of reiterating what the governor had to say last month.
Illinois, as you noted, historically we've registered people with our FOID card registration. This is the first time we're registering weapons themselves. I also think there are a lot of individuals who have these weapons are considering whether to sell them to someone out of state, which is a provision in the law that they're allowed to do. So I do think this is a function of cramming for the test, that people will wait till the last minute. They'll see there's obviously, we're still waiting for a ruling from the Federal Court of Appeals. Some people are waiting for that, but I also expect that number to increase as people recognize that they want to be law-abiding citizens, and they want to be consistent with state law, and they will register their existing legacy weapons. Otherwise, they're risking their FOID card. And I think the vast majority of people are just committed to being law-abiding citizens the way they are now.
Well, and it's interesting, he notes only the appeals court, but that's not the only place that this is. You've got 2 cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court that are very much still pending. And one in particular, the Naperville case, you could possibly see a motion for a preliminary injunction issued by the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett before that January 1st deadline. You've also got the Southern District of Illinois with a case that could possibly lead to a preliminary injunction on this. So with JCAR meeting tomorrow, last month they had a meeting, and State Senator Bill Cunningham, who's the co-chair of JCAR, he's a Democrat out of Chicago, he was asked whether or not this is going to be suspended because of all the uncertainty there is.
I will say that the state police have done a good job of reaching out for public input. That's what we've asked them to do. They held 3 community hearings to take input. That's not something they had to do, but we requested they do that. They have. And I think they have a very difficult job in front of them right now, and I think they're doing it well.
So Cunningham also asked about just the ongoing confusion there was from the public hearings. Doesn't seem that answers were really provided in detail. What about delaying?
This is something we get into with JCAR a lot. The law is the law. There is no changing the law in the rulemaking process. Obviously, there are important details that are added on, but there are individuals that just simply disagree with this law that it is in place. So I don't know that they're ever going to be pleased with the final product, but we have to make sure that the state police follows the proper rulemaking procedures. They have done that so far, and I anticipate if they continue to do that, then a rule will go forward.
So another question that was asked of Cunningham is, this is a pretty technical issue, and there's still some real technical questions that some people haven't had clearly answered. And Cunningham recognizes that in the law that was passed, state police have the ability to change on a yearly basis, not just what firearms are to be registered, but what attachments are to be registered. So all of this is going to have to possibly change again if the law stands legal scrutiny in the courts.
No, I think it makes it difficult, but the existing statute does contemplate the state police dealing with this problem and allows them to amend rules on an ongoing basis. They have that authority in the statute. So I think that problem was anticipated, and that's how the law intends to deal with that problem.
So, again, state police every October 1st can change the rules, so to speak, not just the list of guns. Cunningham also asked about his confidence because of the legal challenges that remain in this. And I did see a question here. I'm not completely neglecting all of the questions in the live comments here, but somebody had asked about whether or not, the Second Amendment reigns supreme. And then is this an issue? It says, hey, Bishop, I have a question. If the Second Amendment's king, then isn't Illinois' Constitution, Section 22, saying subject only to police powers? Isn't that unconstitutional in itself, making PICA null? Well, again, that's up to the courts. And even Senator Cunningham, a Democrat from Chicago, the co-chair of JCAR, he indicates that, until a court final ruling is that it's unconstitutional, the law is a law.
I wouldn't want to speculate. We have a saying that every law is constitutional until a court tells you it's not. So the state police has to go along with the rulemaking as contemplated by the law.
So again, the law is the law until a court tells us otherwise, he says.
I think, as I said, we have to assume that the law is constitutional until a court tells us it's not.
So Todd Vandermeide, back to what he had to say. I asked him, what kind of advice, if he can give any at all, what should people do here in this situation?
I'm not going to give the masses advice, but what I do tell people when I'm asked is everybody has to make their own decision. You have to, look at what your situation is and what is your risk tolerance. It's a Class A misdemeanor for a first offense. It is a Class 4 or 3 felony for a second offense, which requires a conviction on the first part. We've had 90 sheriffs saying they're not going to enforce this. I would assume that if the sheriffs aren't going to charge it, there's probably a fair number of prosecutors that aren't going to chase it down on their own to boot. So with that, people have to make their, I have to be one of those guys that once the government gets their hands on data, it never goes away, that the internet is forever. I understand why some people who would have NFA items that they had to register with the ATF might be inclined to register those guns because they're already on that list. But people are going to have to make up their own decisions as their risk tolerance and what they think to do. I've made up my mind what I'm going to do.
Well, and I asked Todd if he was willing to disclose what he plans on doing. What's he going to do about the registry?
I'm not registering my lightsaber. I'll tell you that much. I'm going to be a good rebel. I'm not registering my lightsaber.
So there you go. Again, it's another big day here, big week for the issue of litigation against Illinois' gun and magazine ban, and we'll be tracking it all. Tomorrow morning, you've got JCAR that's going to be coming into session at 11 o'clock. But what's fascinating there is sometimes that takes some time. So if you're going to be watching that live, then it will be available on a live stream so people can track along. Expected that they will be asking state police to update on some of the things they heard and some of the changes of the rules. Whether or not they're going to vote to suspend the rules, that's still up in the air. Whether or not they're going to object to the rules, that's still up in the air. But don't expect it to start right at 11 o'clock. So if you're going to start watching at 11 o'clock, you might just see an empty room while they then start to pour in 30 to 45 minutes later. I asked Cunningham last month why that is, why they have an 11 o'clock start date. But it seems that there's this closed-door pre-meeting that happens before they actually get down to business.
So during that period, members of the committee get to ask their JCAR staff about the progress that's been made on rulemaking, what often happens is the JCAR staff, the nonpartisan staff of JCAR, meets with stakeholders when there are objections and concerns over rules, and they brief members of JCAR on how those meetings have gone prior to the hearing. And I think you heard several questions and comments that came out of those meetings during the hearing today.
So again, the JCAR meeting set for 11 tomorrow. It's not sure when they're actually going to be out in front of the cameras asking the questions of not just state police, but a whole host of other state agencies with rules in place. So JCAR in the morning. And then in the afternoon, you've got the Southern District of Illinois with the court hearing. That's going to happen with federal firearms licensees of Illinois and a whole bunch of other plaintiffs seeking to delay that January 1st deadline. And Southern District of Illinois Judge Stephen McGlynn already saying he plans to issue a ruling in that challenge to hold that January 1st deadline while the case proceeds. He says he will make a ruling on that question before the Christmas holiday. That while you've also got the U.S. Supreme Court tackling the case with Justice Amy Coney Barrett having gotten the filing from the Naperville case, the response from the state, and a response to the state's response from the Naperville plaintiffs. So a lot of things happening. Stay tuned. More Bishop on Air coming up. Be sure to follow along. Bishop on Air on X, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can watch live alongside all that and catch clips here on YouTube. And don't forget to support the show by clicking that notification bell and also finding some merchandise you want to check out. So make it happen, all right? It's Bishop on Air. Let's now go up to Chicago and check in with William J. Kelly, the reporter out of Chicago. We chat with him on Monday mornings to get a flavor of what's going on in the state's biggest city. And of course, you've got 20 plus shootings that have happened over the weekend. Kelly reporting that even a couple of off-duty police officers were robbed of their badges. He questions where the accountability is and where people are actually being prosecuted and all of these things. But you've also got the ongoing issue of the migrants. And if you recall, last week we chatted with William about the problems with the Brighton Park facility and the toxic chemicals that were found in the soil there, the lack of transparency on that, the overall humanitarian issues, and the taxpayer cost issues. So those continue. Those are issues that are sustained. But William also, he wanted to make sure people were aware of, especially those living in Chicago, how your ability to speak publicly to the city of Chicago seems to be being hindered a bit. Here's some of what William Kelly had to say this morning when talking about the myriad of issues on crime and migrants, but also now when it comes to government accountability.
Well, as you know, better than anyone, we have violent crime out of control. We have a migrant crisis out of control. And this is resulting in citizens wanting to be heard, to attend city council meetings and utilize the public comment section, which, if you recall, I was able to do myself as not only a citizen, but as a reporter who had my media credentials revoked by Mayor Lori Lightfoot. I took advantage of what was already, I thought, pretty limited public comment section where a citizen was allowed to enter a lottery, and if they were one of a handful of people who happened to be picked literally from a fishbowl, then they got the opportunity to get up and speak for 3 minutes. Well, I did this, and I was able to, I believe, not only speak for myself, but for the people of Chicago who their voices were not heard during Lightfoot's entire term as mayor. Well, now Brandon Johnson, who came to the mayor's office promising more open, more accountability, is trying to limit the public comment section from 3 to 1 minute. You need to register 2 weeks in advance in order to attend these meetings. They're moving citizens from the city council chambers to a second or third floor gallery that now has bulletproof glass, like you're entering some kind of I don't know what, like a prison, right? And then you get to talk through the prison hole in the bulletproof glass to your elected officials. I say this is freedom of speech is going in the wrong direction, Greg. And I think it's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. I think that these city council meetings should be considered null and void. And we really need someone to believe me when I say that freedom of speech is under attack in the city of Chicago.
So again, William J. Kelly talking about the process that seems to be under possible change of allowing for citizens to address the city council. Is this being driven, I asked, by people's discontent with the migrant issue, with the lack of resources going to crime, and so on?
100% yes. I think people saw the effect that my 3-minute public comment to Mayor Lightfoot had, and they feel that maybe this is an outlet for them to say that they don't want migrants in their communities, and that they're worried about violent crime. What's really very alarming, Greg, is that in addition to limiting the public comments of citizens at city council meetings, the Chicago City Council is voting this week to expand on hate crime, or a hate crime law that now includes what they're calling hate incidents. They're not crimes, but they want people to report them. And the question is, what constitutes a hate incident? Where they want to track these hate incidents? Where's this database? How are they going to use this information in the future? Will people be able to FOIA and say, okay, here's this here's this person who has 25 hate incident reports against him. What does, where do, who made these reports? What was the incident? Did he post on Facebook? Was he a guest on the Greg Bishop show? What was the incident that is now in this taxpayer funded, again, millions of dollars, database of hate incidents that aren't even crimes? And here's the problem: the real crimes are going completely zero consequences. You have armed robberies every week, dozens of them, no arrest, no description, no consequences. You have 20 plus shootings, 4 murders in the city of Chicago this weekend. Okay, these are summer numbers. These aren't December numbers in the city of Chicago. Okay, so you have shootings once again, and by the way, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of completely unsolved shootings and murders in the city of Chicago already. And now the Chicago City Council is going to spend millions of dollars tracking hate incidents that aren't even crimes. So, there seems to be, Chicago is in a downward spiral of priorities. They're just not going after the real crime. They're not going after the real, the real crisis of migrants. And yet they want to punish, they want to prevent citizens from speaking at the city council meeting. And now they want to go after people for hate incidents that aren't even crimes. So it is a out of control situation here where the priorities are really seem to be damning the city of Chicago to failure.
And William obviously is somebody who is there on the streets, talking with people, getting their ideas and their thoughts and their sentiments, and sometimes having his own thoughts and sentiments. So I appreciate him sharing that with us as we chat with him each and every week as to what's going on in the city of Chicago. And that's, of course, going to be an ongoing conversation, not just the crime, not just the migrant issue, but also the access that citizens have to their own government in Chicago. Something I think is important that we put that spotlight on from time to time. It is Bishop on Air. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow along, find some merchandise below if you want to support the show that way as well. But I think a good way to do it is just tell people about you watching Bishop on Air. So we give you kind of a rundown of what's going on in and around the Illinois area. As a reporter for the Illinois State House, tracking down legislation and such. I hope you guys find value in all that we do to cover the Illinois state government here, but also what's going on in Chicago with the latest. So stay tuned. Just one more segment. We'll review some of the laws that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed on Friday, and just take a look at what we've got to really sift through when it comes to all of the laws that are set to take effect on January 1st, just in a matter of weeks. All right, so stay tuned. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of laws that are set to take effect January 1st here in the state of Illinois. If you recall, during spring session, the state legislature passed, I think, 665 laws. Bills, rather. Of course, a bill doesn't become a law until it's signed by the governor, but the governor citing the vast majority of those. I think he only vetoed like 3 of them, mandatory vetoed a couple of them. So all of these laws set to take effect January 1st. Some of them took effect immediately right when he signed them. But when you go and look at some of the reports from the state legislature, and as far as all the different laws that there are, you can follow along by going to the Illinois legislature and looking at the legislative reports online at ilga.gov. I'll show you really quick how you can find that. So go to ilga.gov. All right. And then under here, you'll see reports and inquiries. If you click on legislative, I should probably flip over here. There you go. So if you go to ilga.gov, and then you click on legislative reports and inquiries, you click legislative reports, and there, if you scroll down, keep going, go all the way down to standing reports. All right. They're periodically updated. But if you click on public acts synopsis, you will see, and also public acts by effective date. That'll give you, these are all the bills that the legislature passed during spring session, all right? All the bills the legislature passed during spring session. There are 12 pages, and on each page, dozens and dozens and dozens of bills with the effective date. So you can see a lot of these took effect when the governor signed them, but others set to take effect on January 1st. So here, you've got just scores of measures that take effect January 1st, and it's quite an extensive list. So myself, I'm going to delve into some of these that are going to take effect January 1st, again, just in a handful of weeks here, 2.5 weeks or so. But then you've also got a different way you can look at this by the public acts and a synopsis of the public acts. If you click on that, it'll actually give you, it's 444 pages, but you can go through and read all the legalese of all of these bills and when they're set to take effect. You know, this one, for instance, took effect May 10th of this year, but others, it'll tell you that take effect on January 1st. Whenever we find those particular measures, those obviously are going to be interesting to highlight. So again, you can pour through all this yourself, but that's not the only laws taking effect, because Governor J.B. Pritzker on Friday, he signed 17 bills. And in my reporting for the Center Square, you'll be able to find this at the Illinois page. Go and check it out, because we do break down, you know, the measures ranging from lifting the state's nuclear moratorium to addressing electric vehicle policies, to even, lifting the fees on certain players in the cannabis industry. These were all measures that the governor signed on Friday that were passed during veto session. So again, kind of, some civics 101 in the state of Illinois. You've got 2-year general assemblies. They have a 2-year term. We elected as a state the General Assembly that's in session now. We elected them in 2022, and in January of this year, they opened up a new 2-year session. So they've finished out this calendar year. They're going to come back for another calendar year, and they are going to be taking up measures that they probably even filed at the beginning of this year. So still a lot to happen with the General Assembly, but with each year in the 2-year session, you've got a spring session that happens, and the thing they have to do there is pass a budget, right? It's always the big thing of contention is a budget. So they went ahead and they passed a budget, but they also passed hundreds of other bills. As I said, 665 bills they passed, which the governor enacted, most of them, vast majority of them, only like 4 or 5 he didn't enact as is. But regardless, you've got, spring session where they deal with that. The deadline is May 31st to pass things with a simple majority. And then over the summer, they go back to their district, they hang out, they do politicking, they do the state fair, and then they come in for fall, what's considered a veto session. All right, fall veto session, they take up whatever they want, but really the focus is supposed to be on any bills the governor vetoed over the summer, from which they passed in the spring. So, veto session happened, but they didn't just deal with some vetoes, they also dealt with a whole host of other things. So let's go back and check out the bills that the governor signed, 17 of them. One of them, House Bill 2473, lifts the moratorium on new construction for nuclear reactors. But the original bill that passed had some language the governor didn't like. He wanted to focus on small modular reactors. So they ultimately did pass a measure that brought all the language together together and address the governor's concerns. They passed that, and the governor signed that. That's going to be effective June 1st of 2024. But that just allows for enough time for the various rules to be put together to regulate that. You also have effective January 1st, the Electric Charging Act is amended by clarifying which of the act's requirements apply to newly constructed residential homes. This measure was contentious when it originally passed in the spring, because there were concerns from home builders. This is going to increase the cost of a new home, requiring that some kind of, electric vehicle charging station be installed. And there were talks about, is it per parking place? Is it, can they just put the conduit in there? And then if the homeowner wants to have an electric vehicle charger there, they can put one in there at their own cost. Or is this going to be forced onto the builders? But apparently they went ahead and had to modify that despite passing to clarify which of the Act's requirements apply to newly constructed residential homes and which apply to new and existing residential units. Another measure they passed, Senate Bill 1769 that the governor signed on Friday. It exempts law enforcement vehicles from the requirement that passenger vehicles purchased or leased by state governments must be zero-emission vehicles during January 1st of 2030. This was something that was debated even over the spring session as to, you're only requiring that state agencies have electric vehicles or zero-emission vehicles, which I think leaves it open to possibly include hydrogen or hybrid type vehicles. But either way, the questions were, well, what about, are you going to force this on municipal governments? Are you going to force this on county governments? The state said, no, we're just going to do state agencies right now. So they then had to come back and amend it further during veto session, because there were concerns from law enforcement. If you're going to have the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, they can't necessarily operate with electric vehicles in the time of an emergency where the power might be out for a week or if not more. What about, state police? What about the fire marshal? So emergency vehicles apparently getting a carve out from Senate Bill 1796 that the governor signed on Friday. Also on Friday, the governor signed a bill that's effective immediately. It waives the license fees for existing cannabis transportation organizations, and it lifts those fees through January 1st of 2027, among several other changes. There's also changes to the first responder pensions in Chicago. You've got pension changes for Chicago police. I believe that one changes the birth date requirements that people are able to get the 3% compounded COLA. But there are also some changes to the Chicago firefighters police pension fund, rather. So some interesting things there as well. So those are just some of the laws that the governor signed on Friday. 17 of them altogether. But leading that, of course, I think is top of mind for a lot of people is the lifting of the nuclear moratorium. So you've got that at play. But again, you've got just dozens and dozens and dozens of different laws that are set to take effect on January 1st that are going to hit all kinds of different ways, from driving regulations to child labor to how gender inclusive data reports. You got equal pay. You've got a whole host of other things that are going to go into effect on January 1st. Not to also mention that you've got the state's minimum wage that's going to increase as well on January 1st. So a lot of things to consider, especially heading into the new year. But we'll do what we can to keep you guys up to date on all of that and more. I'm Greg Bishop. Hopefully you guys have been informed, and stay tuned. Of course, you could subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Appreciate you guys being with us each and every weekday morning. And of course, you can catch these segments and more just by subscribing to Bishop on Air on YouTube. So we'll see you back here in very short order tomorrow, about the same time. All right, we'll be back at it. So stay tuned. It is Bishop on Air. Appreciate you guys.